Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're decoding a topic that affects literally every single property owner in Nelson County, Kentucky. We're taking a super focused look at exactly why local plumbing systems fail in Bardstown, the hidden environmental forces at play behind the scenes, and, most importantly, how to fix these absolute disasters the right way. So if you want to really understand the structural battle your home is fighting every single day, well, you're absolutely in the right place.
Okay, let's dive right into this. We've all felt that immediate terrible spike of panic, right? You wake up, you step into what should be a nice hot shower, and bam, you get blasted with freezing cold water. Or even worse, you walk downstairs and find your basement sitting under an inch of muddy water. It's incredibly stressful. But here in Bardstown, these failures aren't just random bad luck. No, they're the direct result of some highly specific geographical and structural challenges that are completely unique to our region.
To understand exactly why this happens, we actually have to start underground. Take a look at the invisible threat of hard water scale. See, Bardstown sits right on top of Kentucky's famous limestone bedrock. And as groundwater moves through that bedrock, the limestone literally dissolves right into the water supply, pumping it full of high levels of calcium and magnesium. It's a relentless, totally invisible threat. Those minerals leave behind this crusty, white scale that slowly builds up inside your pipes, completely clogs up your sink aerators, and settles like a heavy blanket at the bottom of your water heater, basically forcing it to work twice as hard until it prematurely burns out. So, here's our quick roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll look at the environmental assault on your home. Then, we're going to explore housing eras under fire, because, believe it or not, the age of your house really matters here. Third, we'll cover the law and liability. And finally, we'll wrap up by walking through professional service protocols to see how the pros actually handle these emergencies.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, Environmental Assault, Nature versus Plumbing.
Now, what's really fascinating here is that we tend to think of our homes as these perfectly safe, static shelters. But a home isn't static at all. It's constantly battling intense environmental forces. For instance, Bardstown has these expansive clay soils that actually swell and shrink depending on the moisture, physically shifting your underground sewer lines until they'd literally snap. And if you're near the Beach Fork River, well, high water tables are just constantly pushing against your foundation. Add in those brutal January and February freeze-thaw cycles that turn the standing water inside your exposed crawlspace pipes into expanding ice. Oh, and on top of all that, local oak, maple, and willow trees are actively sending their roots deep underground, hunting for the moisture inside your sewer lines. It's wild.
In that high water table I mentioned, it leads to a phenomenon known as hydrostatic pressure. If you've ever dealt with the flooded basement during the heavy spring rains, well, this is the actual science behind your panic. When the ground becomes completely saturated, the sheer weight and force of all that groundwater actually pushes its way through tiny, microscopic cracks in your home's foundation. The water literally forces its way indoors. It's like your house is a submarine under too much pressure.
Just think about these actions for a second. Roots invading and strangling your sewer connections with massive fibrous clogs. Expanding ice violently splitting solid copper tubing right open. Limestone quietly dissolving and coating the inside of your brand new appliances. The local environment isn't just passively sitting there outside your window. It's aggressively and continuously trying to dismantle your plumbing system.
Moving right along to Section 2, Housing Eras Under Fire and Why Age Matters.
And this brilliantly illustrates how the area your house was built in completely changes the type of disaster you might face. We're really looking at two totally different battlegrounds here. On one hand, you have historic downtown properties built between 1920 and 1960, which rely heavily on aging galvanized steel. And on the other, you have the boom of modern subdivisions built in the 2000s, which rely on flexible PEX tubing.
Let's start with the older homes. If you own a historic property near downtown Bardstown, your invisible enemy is rust. Those original galvanized steel pipes literally corrode from the inside out. Over the decades, all that rust builds up, which severely restricts your water pressure. But worst of all, this corrosion eventually eats right through the metal itself, creating these tiny, sneaky pinhole leaks that'll suddenly spray water inside your walls and under your floors with zero warning whatsoever. And, it usually happens at 2 a.m. on a holiday weekend, right?
But listen, newer absolutely does not mean safer. During the massive construction boom in the 2000s, builders rapidly installed PEX tubing in those new subdivisions east of town. Now, PEX is a fantastic material, but poor installation practices left a ton of these modern homes incredibly vulnerable. Plumbers taking shortcuts left behind kink lines, weak connections that just blow apart under pressure, and totally inadequate venting that actually allows dangerous sewer gases to back up into the living space.
Okay, on to Section 3, the law and liability and how to protect your home.
So, the absolutely crucial point to take away here is that knowing your vulnerabilities is one thing, but trying to fix them brings up a massive financial risk. If you try a well-intentioned weekend DIY fix just to save a few bucks, and that fix fails and floods your house, well, insurance policies often completely deny your claim. No joke. They strictly exclude coverage for damage if the work was done by an unlicensed contractor or without the right permits. You could literally be left paying a massive home restoration bill completely out of your own pocket.
And speaking of permits, Kentucky enforces strict parameters under the International Plumbing Code, mostly to protect public health. In Nelson County, you legally must pull a permit for installing a new water heater, any repiping project involving more than 3 fixtures, any sewer line repairs outside your foundation, and absolutely all gas line work. These aren't just polite suggestions, folks. They're strict legal requirements to ensure your safety and keep your property insurance totally valid.
Which brings us to our final section, Section 4, Professional Service Protocols and Professional Solutions.
Let's move away from the anxiety of all these failures and liabilities and look at how industry professionals bring actual structured resolution to the chaos. It's super helpful to set realistic expectations for how long code-compliant repairs really take. Swapping out a fixture, usually about 1 to 3 hours. Replacing a water heater properly, which means removal, venting, and testing, that's more like 3 to 5 hours. But if you have severe root intrusion destroying your sewer line, excavation and replacement is easily a 2 to 4 day job. And fully repiping an old historic home, that's a major multi-day project. Good, safe work takes time. Now take a look at this number, 60. When it's a true water gushing everywhere disaster, speed is absolutely everything. This number represents the maximum minutes it takes for an emergency professional dispatch in Bardstown according to local service protocols by teams like Victory Plumbing. Just contrast that 60-minute professional response time with a fully stocked truck showing up at your door against hours of frantic, unpermitted DIY chaos while your basement is literally filling up with water.
Let's see how this builds into a clean, predictable sequence. When you rely on the pros, it's a super simple 3-step process. Step 1. Contact and dispatch. This is all about assessing the urgency and getting someone out there fast. Step 2. Diagnosis and giving you a transparent, written estimate before the wrenches even come out of the toolbox. And Step 3. The code-compliant repair, followed by actual verification testing, just to prove that the system works exactly like it should. And honestly, that diagnosis step is the real game changer. True professionals don't just treat the symptom. I mean, if your drain is slow, pouring harsh chemicals down the sink, or doing a quick snake is just a Band-Aid. The pros will actually run a camera inspection down your main sewer line to visually identify the root cause, like, say, a massive oak tree root intrusion. Treating the actual root cause saves you money in the long run and prevents the exact same disaster from repeating itself next month. Which brings us to our final thought. Look, the Bardstown environment is tough. Between the limestone bedrock, the freezing winters, and those aging historic pipes, it's a whole lot for any house to handle. So, before you grab that wrench, ask yourself, will a weekend DIY fix cost you your home's insurance coverage when the next Kentucky freeze hits? It's a huge risk. Understanding the true codes, the root causes, and the correct professional solutions is literally the absolute best way to protect your property. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, stay curious.